mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, in the integrality and absoluteness of bhakti and surrender, we find the essential condition of perfect peace, leading to uninterrupted bliss. With my love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, Letters on Yoga, Part 3, Chapter 1, The Inward Movement. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the outer work is only half the matter. There is also the consciousness within which does the work, and that must develop from the mental vital to the spiritual psychic. How can it do that without experience? Also, one can develop an intuitive consciousness which is helpful to the work. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, what you say about the outer being is correct. It must change and manifest what is within in the inner nature. But for that, one must have the experience in the inner nature, and through these, the power of the inner nature grows till it can influence wholly and possess the outer being. To change the outer consciousness entirely without developing this inner consciousness would be too difficult. That is why these inner experiences are going to prepare the growth of the inner consciousness. There is an inner mind, inner vital, inner physical consciousness which can more easily than the outer receive the higher consciousness above and put itself into harmony with the psychic being. When that is done, the outer nature is felt only as a fringe on the surface, not as oneself, and is more easily transformed altogether. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, whatever difficulties there may still be in the outer nature, they will not make any difference to the fact that you are now awake within. The Divine Mother's force working in you, and you, her true child, destined to be perfectly that in all ways. Put your faith and your thought entirely on her, and you will go through all safely. The self-will of the mind wanting things in its own way and not in the Divine's way is a great obstacle. With that gone, the way should become much less rough and hard to follow. The outer consciousness, says our Lord, the outer consciousness can grow in faith, fidelity to the Divine, reverence, love, worship and adoration, great things in themselves, though in fact these things too come from within. But realization can only take place when the inner being is awake with its vision and feeling of things unseen. Till then, one can feel the results of the divine help, and if one has faith, know that they are the work of the divine, but it is only then that one can feel clearly the force at work, the divine presence, the divine direct communion. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, so as long as you live only in thoughts and moments of the surface consciousness, you cannot be conscious in the yogic sense. It is when the mind becomes quiet that the real inner consciousness comes out, or the higher consciousness above the mind comes down. It is only then also the inner physical being becomes active, brings an alert consciousness and an intuitive sense into the body. Also, the higher thought and the inner will comes then only. The exterior being has to become aware of the inner. The veil between the inner and the outer consciousness has to be removed. It is only then that a real yogic consciousness begins. The outer has to be merely an instrument or a channel for the inner to express itself and communicate with the outer physical world. The inner, again, has to have free communication with the universal on all the planes. It has to enter into the cosmic consciousness. The outer consciousness has to be remolded and reshaped through the inner consciousness, and the process that must do it are the psychic by its influence and the higher consciousness by its descent. Naturally, in the process, the outer being also will lose its separativeness and become aware of and, in a way, unified with the universal, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next topic, becoming aware of the inner being. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is not that anything has been taken from you, but as you say at the end, your being is seen by you into two parts. That is a thing that happens as the sadhana proceeds and must happen in order that one may have completely the knowledge of oneself and the true consciousness. These two parts are the inner being and the outer being. The outer being is the mind, vital and physical, has now become capable of quietude. It sits in meditation in a free, happy, vacant quietude, which is the first step towards the true consciousness. The inner being, which is the inner mind, inner vital, inner physical, is not lost but gone inside. The outer part does not know where, but probably gone inside into union with the psychic. The only thing that can have gone is something of the old nature that was standing in the way of this experience. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the silence descends into the inner being first, as also other things from the higher consciousness. The silence descends into the inner being first, as also other things from the higher consciousness. One can become aware of this inner being, calm, silent, strong, untouched by the movements of nature, full of knowledge or light, and at the same time be aware of another lesser being, the small personality on the surface, which is made up of moments of nature, or else still subject to them, or else, if not subject to them, still open to invasion by them. This is a condition, says our Lord. This is a condition that any number of sadhaks and yogis have experienced. The inner being means the psychic, the inner mind, the inner vital, the inner physical. In this condition, none of these can be touched, so there has been an essential purification. All need not feel this division into two consciousnesses, but must do. When it is there, the will that decides the action is in the inner being, not in the outer. So the invasion of the outer by vital movements can in no way compel the action. It is on the contrary a very favorable stage in the transformation, because the inner being can bring the whole force of the higher consciousness in it to change the nature wholly, observing the action of nature without being affected by it, putting the force for change wherever needed, and setting the whole being right as one does with a machine. That is, if one wants a transformation, for many Vedantins don't think it necessary, they say the inner being is mukta. The rest is simply a mechanical continuation of the impetus of nature in the physical man, and will drop away with the body so that one can depart into nirvana. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, in fact, all these ignorant vital movements originate from outside in the ignorant universal nature. The human being forms in his superficial parts of being, mental, vital, physical, a habit of certain responses to these waves from outside. It is these responses that he takes as his own character of anger, desire, sex, etc., and thinks he cannot be otherwise. But that is not so. He can change. There is another consciousness deeper within him, his true inner being, which is his real self, but is covered by the superficial nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, this the ordinary man does not know, but the yogi becomes aware of it as he progresses in his sadhana. As the consciousness of this inner being increases by sadhana, the surface nature and its responses are pushed out and can be got rid of altogether. But the ignorant universal nature does not want to let go and throws the old movements on the sadhak and tries to get them inside him again. Owing to a habit, the superficial nature gives the old responses. If one can get the firm knowledge that these things are from outside and not a real part of oneself, then it is easier for the sadhak to repel such notions, or if they hold, he can get rid of them sooner. That is why I repeatedly say that these things are not in yourself but come from outside, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next topic, the piercing of the veil. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the cry you heard was not in the physical heart but in the emotional center. The breaking of the wall meant the breaking of the obstacle, or at least of some obstacle there between your inner and your outer being. Most people live in the ordinary outer ignorant personality which does not easily open to the divine. But there is an inner being within them of which they do not know, which can easily open to the truth and the light. But there is a wall which divides them from it, a wall of obscurity and unconsciousness. When it breaks down, then there is a release, the feeling of calm, ananda, joy, which you had immediately afterwards were due to that release. The cry you heard was the cry of the vital part in you, overcome by the suddenness of the breaking of the wall and the opening. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the piercing of the veil between the outer consciousness and the inner being is one of the crucial moments in yoga. For integral yoga means union with the divine, but it also means awaking first to your inner self and then to your higher self, a movement inward and a movement upward. It is in fact only through the awakening and coming to the front of the inner being that you can get into union with the divine. The outer physical man is only an instrument, personality, and by himself he cannot arrive at this union. He can only get occasional touches, religious feelings, imperfect intimations. And even these come not from the outer consciousness, but that is what is within us. There are two mutually complementary movements. In one, the inner being comes to the front and impresses its own normal notions on the outer consciousness, to which they are unusual and abnormal. The outer is to draw back from the outer consciousness, to go inside into the inner planes, enter the world of your inner self, and wake in the hidden parts of your being. When that plunge has once taken, you are marked for the yoga, the yogic life, the spiritual life, and nothing can efface the seal that has been put upon you. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, this inward movement takes place in many different ways, and there's sometimes a complex experience combining all the signs of the complete plunge. There is a sense of going in or deep down, a feeling of the movement towards the inner depths. There is often a stillness, a pleasant numbness, a stiffness of the limbs. This is the sign of the consciousness retiring from the body inwards under the pressure of a force from above. That pressure stabilizing the body into an immobile support of the inner life in a kind of strong and spontaneous asana. There is a feeling of waves surging up, mounting to the head, which brings an outer consciousness and an inner waking. It is the ascending of the lower consciousness to meet the greater consciousness above. It is a moment analogous to that on which so much stress is laid in tantric process, the awakening of the kundalini, the energy coiled up and latent in the body and mounting through the spinal cord and the centers, the chakras, the brahmarandra to meet the divine above. But in our integral yoga, it is not a specialized process but a spontaneous uprush of the lower consciousness, sometimes in currents or waves, sometimes in less concrete motion. On the other side, a descent of the divine consciousness and its force into the body. This descent is felt as a pouring in of calm, peace, of force and power, of light and joy and ecstasy, of wideness, freedom and knowledge, of a divine being or a presence, sometimes one of these, sometimes several. and it has various results. It may liberate the consciousness so that one feels no longer in the body but above it, or else spread in wideness when the body is almost non existent or only a point in one's free expanse. It may enable the being or some part of the being to go out of the body, or a partial samadhi or a complete trance. It may result in empowering the consciousness, no longer limited by the body, the habit of the external nature to go within, to enter the inner depths, to become aware of the inmost psychic self, and to live in the domains, the worlds that correspond to the parts of the nature. It is a repeated constant ascent of the lower consciousness that enables the mind, physical, to get in touch with the higher planes, to the supramental, and get impregnated with their light, power, and influence. And it is a repeated constant descent of the divine consciousness and the force that is the means for the transformation of the whole being. To be continued.